So what does it take to guide someone through one of the most confusing, most formative times of their life? Today, we're digging into a really powerful case study on mentorship from the Union of Evangelical Students of India. They've put together this unique, faith-based blueprint for shaping future leaders, and we're about to break down exactly how it works.
I mean, this quote right here just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? College is so much more than just classes and exams. It's this pressure cooker where you're forced to face these massive questions about who you are and where you're headed. And it's that exact vulnerability that this whole mentorship model is designed to speak into.
Okay, so before we can really appreciate the solution, we first have to get our heads around the problem. The whole argument here is that there's an urgent need for guidance because today's students are navigating a really challenging and crucial season of life. Let's take a look at the numbers.
And this is where the picture starts to get crystal clear. Just look at this gap. The source found that even within their own community of graduates, people who are perfectly positioned to be mentors, only about a quarter of them are actually doing it. That leaves this huge majority on the sidelines, and it creates a massive guidance deficit for the students who need it most.
Now this shows you the sheer scale of the challenge for the mentors who are in the game. We're seeing ratios as high as 9 students for every single graduate mentor in some areas. And while the source doesn't really get into the weeds on the difference between decentralized and non-decentralized states, the takeaway is obvious. Mentors are stretched incredibly thin, which makes that deep personal investment really, really tough.
And the stakes are just so high because these struggles are very real. This isn't just about numbers on a chart. We're talking about the human cost. The source points to intense loneliness, a real rise in mental health concerns, and this paralyzing fear of being judged that can make students feel completely and totally alone. This is the urgent backdrop for the whole mentoring model.
All right, so we've established the problem. How in the world does this model propose to solve it? Well, the source introduces a philosophy it calls walking beside, pointing above. And this is way more than just a catchy phrase. It really defines a deeply relational approach to mentorship that they give a specific name: biblical mentoring.
The source draws a really sharp line in the sand here. On one side, you have what it calls secular mentoring. Think professional development, learning new skills, hitting your goals. But on the other side, biblical mentoring is presented as something else entirely. It's relational, it's transformative. Its main goal is to shape a person's core character and their faith. It's a fundamental shift from focusing on what you do to focusing on who you are becoming.
And here it is, the official definition right from the booklet. It's a Christ-centered journey of walking beside a student. That phrase, walking beside, is everything. It implies a partnership, not some kind of top-down hierarchy. The goal isn't just to drop advice from on high, but to actually get in the trenches with the student, actively shaping their character through both encouragement and challenge.
Okay, so we've got the why and the what. Now let's talk about the how. The source takes this big philosophy and translates it into 3 very real, very practical strategies. Let's break them down.
So the model is really built on 3 core pillars that move from the super personal to the communal. It all starts with classic one-to-one mentoring, then it expands to these small, tight-knit groups called micro prayer cells, and finally it broadens out into a community-based open home model. Let's see how each layer actually works.
First up, we have the most direct form, one-to-one. And what's absolutely crucial here is the mentor's role. It's not about giving out their own life advice or just sharing personal opinions. No, their job is to be a guide, helping the student figure out how to apply principles from the Bible to their own everyday life. The mentor is more of a facilitator, not the ultimate source of wisdom.
Next, you've got the micro prayer cell, and the structure here is really, really smart. It's not just a random small group. It's very specific: 1 graduate, 1 senior student, and 2 junior students. That senior student is the secret sauce. They act as a bridge between the graduate and the younger students. This creates this tiny, multi-generational support system, all focused on accountability and growing together. It's just a brilliant way to scale mentorship.
And finally, there's open home mentoring, which is a strategy built on good old-fashioned hospitality. Mentors literally open up their homes to students, and not just for some formal meeting, but for real life, sharing meals, doing chores together. I mean, in an age where our lives are so scheduled and private, this model creates this safe, trusted space where organic conversations can just happen. And let's be real, it requires a huge, sacrificial adjustment from the hosts. But look, these strategies don't just operate in a vacuum. Holding all of them up is a set of core principles. These are the foundational values that guide every single interaction and make sure the mentorship stays true to its purpose. You can think of these principles as the ethical backbone of the whole model. They include a commitment to life transparency, which means mentors are encouraged to share their own struggles. There's faithfulness over perfection. I mean, what a relief, right? It takes the pressure off of being flawless. Then, crucially, there's the promise of confidentiality to build trust. And then you have this idea of passing it on, which is what makes this whole thing a self-sustaining cycle. And that principle, passing it on, is just perfectly captured by this Billy Graham quote that's in the guide. We are not cisterns made for hoarding, we are channels made for sharing. The whole idea is that wisdom and guidance aren't meant to be stockpiled in a bucket. They're meant to flow through you to others. Today's mentee is expected to become tomorrow's mentor, ensuring the process just keeps multiplying. So after all that, what is the ultimate goal here? What's the end game? The source uses this incredibly powerful metaphor to illustrate its vision, one that's drawn from the parable of the mustard seed. It's all about the massive, long-term impact that can come from very small, very intentional beginnings. The metaphor is so simple, but it's also incredibly profound. A single tiny seed, when it's intentionally planted and cared for, can grow into a massive tree that provides shelter and a home for others. This is the big picture vision for the entire mentorship philosophy, and it happens in 3 distinct stages. Step 1 is intentional sowing. It all kicks off with someone making the choice to invest. According to this model, mentorship is not something that just happens by accident. It's a deliberate, conscious act of planting values and principles in another person's life.
And step 2 is patient nourishment. Because, a seed doesn't become a tree overnight. This stage represents the long-term commitment of the relationship, all the consistent care, guidance, and prayer that's required for real, deep growth to happen. And the result of that intentional sowing and all that patient nourishment is finally transformative growth. The mentee becomes a mature tree, someone who is strong enough to provide shelter and support for others. They become the mentor, and the cycle begins all over again. Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. If one mentored individual can grow into a tree that shelters others, then the long-term vision of this model isn't just about growing one tree, it's about cultivating an entire forest. The question it poses is all about multiplication. What does it take to turn a single act of mentorship into a widespread, lasting legacy?